Greetings everyone. Here are the main highlights in this video. Breaking news. Ukraine shatters Russia's shadow fleet. 11 ships destroyed. The Middle East is ablaze. Iran releases video of UAVs raining fire down on a US base. The brutal thirst for oil. Could this be the end of the Putin era? Recently, war broke out between the US and Iran as the Arab coalition unexpectedly attacked Iran. Ukrainian UAVs have penetrated Russian air defenses, burning down the Engels strategic bomber base. The US is on the brink of disaster, with people panicking and fleeing, calling for urgent evacuation. Welcome to the analysis program of Luan Banchensu. Before we get into the content, we hope you can take a few seconds to like the video and subscribe to the channel so we can continue. Thank you, dear viewers. Breaking news. Ukraine has shattered Russia's shadow fleet, leaving 11 ships destroyed. Ladies and gentlemen, in the context of sanctions imposed by the West, the economic lifeline of the Kremlin is being strangled right on the waves of the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. To maintain the financial flow for the war machine, Moscow has long had to bet on an invisible but powerful entity, the Shadow Fleet, anonymous transport ships specializing in carrying oil and fuel to bypass international sanctions. However, this risky maritime gamble is now facing a brutal obstacle called the unmanned systems of the Ukrainian forces. Through a large-scale and tightly coordinated raid, Ukraine delivered a direct blow to the opponent's energy transport capability, pushing Russia's maritime logistics system into an extremely dangerous situation. In the latest firestorm at sea, this strategy has led to the loss of at least 11 transport ships from Russia's Shadow Fleet. Military analysts consider this a tremendously serious systemic loss, because the list of destroyed targets ranges from super heavy transport ships to vital support vessels. Specifically, the attack completely wiped out 5 large oil tankers, 1 liquefied gas carrier named Leningrad, 3 supply cargo ships, and 2 rescue tugboats. The simultaneous elimination of both tugboats and oil tankers not only cripples the immediate fuel supply capability of the port, but also disables rescue and emergency response at sea, turning Russia's remaining shipping routes into deadly high-risk passages. Looking at the broader context of the conflict, this is a key phase in the systematic strangulation campaign, codenamed Maloka, which was launched in early July. Since the launch of this campaign, Ukraine has established an invisible but deadly web of fire on the water, turning areas of the sea that were once tightly controlled by Russia into a massive death trap. Battlefield statistics reveal an astonishing fact. A total of 147 ships belonging to Russia's Shadow Fleet have been hit. Among them, the Sea of Azov, which was strictly defended by Russia, suffered the heaviest losses with 117 ships attacked, while 30 other ships were hunted down and destroyed right on the Black Sea. This telling figure is evidence of the remarkable shift in the balance of maritime power in the region, where a country without a traditionally strong navy like Ukraine can cripple an entire large-scale transportation system. The intense documentary footage released by the Ukrainian military has vividly captured the moments when invisible killers sped across the water, turning massive steel giants in the ocean into blazing torches. By completely destroying these means of transportation, while directly breaking the tools used to evade sanctions, they are cutting off the vital financial resources needed to sustain the war. The Middle East is ablaze. Iran releases video of UAVs raining fire down on US bases. The Middle East is once again heated up by the direct confrontation between Washington and Tehran. The region was shaken violently as Iranian media continuously broadcast dramatic footage, capturing close-up scenes of new-generation drone attacks targeting U.S. military bases in Koa, Kuwait, Bajaj, and Jordan. In the deep night, Iran's powerful long-range suicide UAVs, Airbase, pierced through defensive fire and plunged straight into the strategic Ali al-Salam Airbase in Kuwait. This lightning strike not only targeted massive fuel storage tanks, but also directly destroyed advanced air defense positions, surveillance radar stations, and early warning systems, which were considered impenetrable shields. The sight of burning military facilities and devastated U.S. troop concentrations painted a tragic picture of the vulnerability of Western fortresses in the face of asymmetric warfare using unmanned technology. The brutal thirst for oil. Could this be the end of the Putin era? While the Middle East is boiling, in Eastern Europe, Another brutal war of attrition is also witnessing a historic turning point as Ukraine uses these very unmanned weapons to strike at Russia's energy lifeline. According to analysis from the prestigious Foreign Policy magazine, Kyiv's campaign of striking Russian energy facilities is no longer new, but the scale, intensity, and range of these attacks in recent months have reached a whole new level, profoundly changing the face of the battlefield since the conflict erupted. Kyiv has skillfully optimized its increasingly advanced long-range arsenal, from upgraded suicide UAVs to cruise missiles, to push the flames of war deep into Russian territory and establish an unprecedented counteroffensive posture. The most powerful evidence of this terrifying reach is the destruction of the Owen oil refinery deep in Siberia, more than 2,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The collapse of this largest oil refinery complex in Russia is not only an extremely heavy psychological shock for the local people, but also creates a shockwave of panic right within the corridors of power in the Kremlin, signaling that no land in Russia is safe from Ukraine's firepower. Kyiv's wrath from the sky shows no sign of cooling down as continuous attacks rain down on a series of oil refineries, storage facilities, oil export ports, and strategic fuel tanks across Russia. At the same time, Ukraine's use of a fleet of unmanned boats to neutralize and destroy Russia's oil tanker fleet in the Black Sea has set an unprecedented precedent in the history of modern naval warfare. These relentless losses are pushing Russia into an extremely dire situation on both domestic and foreign fronts. Right in the heart of Russia, people have begun to endure the bitter reality of lining up in long queues at gas stations, waiting for their turn to refuel. Russia's capacity to refine crude oil into essential consumer products, such as gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, has been severely reduced, forcing the government to impose strict rationing measures. A bitter reality that Russian state media is desperately trying to conceal, but cannot cover up the truth. The cold statistics from the Institute of Energy Research OFS have exposed the devastating extent of this crisis. Russia has officially lost up to 1/5 of its total oil refining capacity. The drastic decline from more than 5 million barrels per day before the war to just under 4 million barrels per day at present marks the lowest point in Russia's oil and gas industry in the past 21 years. The tightening grip from highly precise strikes targeting complex petrochemical refining facilities, combined with the destruction of key export infrastructure, is putting immense pressure on both the domestic consumer market and Moscow's global sales revenue. The volume of oil product shipments at Russia's seaports has plummeted to the lowest level ever recorded. On one side, production capacity is paralyzed. On the other, the export door is tightly shut. Russia is trapped in a dark maze of economic collapse. This situation is unfolding just as the U.S. Congress is rushing to pass additional tough provisions to strengthen the sanctions law against Russia, like an invisible noose tightening around the last lifeline of a superpower trembling under the heat of a costly war. Urgent. War has begun between the U.S. and Iran, with the Arab coalition launching attacks on Tehran. The brief peace agreement has quickly collapsed, giving way to the roar of weapons and cold calculations. In Ankara, the capital of Turkey, during the NATO summit, President Donald Trump coldly announced the end of the ceasefire agreement with a strong statement. "I think it's over." This statement was made just a few hours after U.S. forces launched a series of intense airstrikes on multiple Iranian military targets in response to Tehran's repeated harassment and attacks on commercial ships along international shipping routes. The immediate trigger for this brutal escalation was a lightning raid targeting 2 oil tankers flying the flag of the United Arab Emirates, UAE, named Mombasa and Anbaya. While moving through the southern route of the Strait of Hormuz, within Oman's territorial waters, both of these supertankers were hit directly by 2 cruise missiles launched by Iranian forces. Although the fire was quickly brought under control and the situation was temporarily stabilized, the security impact was immeasurable. The UAE Ministry of Defense strongly condemned this action as a clear violation of international law and a threat to regional stability. They also stated they reserved the right to retaliate to protect their sovereignty, territory, and national security, putting all armed forces on red alert. This shocking event has effectively ended the ceasefire agreement, which both sides had signed with hope just a month earlier. Rather than promoting peace, the U.S. and Iran have repeatedly accused each other of seriously violating the agreement's terms. Diplomatic sources close to Politico admit that all mediation efforts to restore the ceasefire or bring both sides back to the negotiating table have now reached a dead end. Observers believe that the core of this deadlock lies in the complete breakdown of strategic trust between Washington and Tehran, a foundation that is essential for any diplomatic process. The White House is currently facing a highly risky situation, as even they cannot accurately predict where this conflict will lead or how long it will last. This creates a troubling security gap in one of the world's most sensitive maritime regions. In this uncompromising standoff, the United States is showcasing overwhelming military power to deter its adversary. A massive steel fortress has been firmly deployed in the Middle East, including 2 carrier strike groups with about 29 modern warships and an elite marine task force of up to 2,500 troops. Most of these warships are equipped with highly accurate long-range cruise missile systems, combined with powerful fighter squadrons and long-range rocket artillery, which are stationed in allied countries along the Persian Gulf. However, President Donald Trump's ultimate strategic goal is to force Iran to completely relinquish control over the vital shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz, the world's energy lifeline. This is an extremely difficult goal because history has shown that Iran has demonstrated the ability to withstand military pressure and economic sanctions, while constantly maintaining a persistent threat to oil tankers with its arsenal of drones and homemade missiles. Whether the current lightning airstrike campaign by the U.S. can break the will and asymmetric combat capabilities of Iran remains a big unanswered question. A Ukrainian UAV has penetrated Russian air defenses and set fire to the Engels strategic bomber base. The silence of the Saratov region was suddenly shattered by the eerie roar of engines, drones, and fierce bursts of fire erupting in the sky. Local residents in both cities had to endure terrifying hours as they witnessed numerous unmanned objects circling in the sky, accompanied by thunderous explosions that shook the earth and sky, all of which were vividly captured in videos spreading across Telegram social media groups. Immediately after those shocks, open-source intelligence groups Mozint and the independent media channel Atre quickly located and confirmed a massive column of thick black smoke rising from the area of the Engels II strategic military airbase. The large blazing fires recorded directly at this airbase are powerful evidence that Kyiv's strike successfully pierced the solid defensive shield, protecting the priceless military assets of Moscow. However, the tragedy of modern warfare does not stop at purely military targets. Panic swept over the Engels residential area when a drone suddenly crashed straight into a high-rise apartment building, spreading extreme fear among hundreds of households. Analysts believe that the cause of this catastrophic collision stems from the confusion within the Russian air defense system. When they are forced to intercept targets right over the city skies, they inadvertently turn burning debris and out-of-control UAVs into immediate threats to civilians. The pressure from the subsequent chain explosions knocked out the power grid, plunging a vast area of Engels into deep darkness. This is not the first time Engels has suffered such painful blows. In the history of the conflict, this top-secret airbase has been repeatedly targeted, most notably the major fire in March last year, an event that was once confirmed by the governor of Saratov region himself, Mr. Zoman Busasin. This repeated series of attacks is evidence of Ukraine's persistent and cold-blooded strategy to gradually cripple the wings of the strategic air force right at their point of origin. As disaster looms, people flee in panic and emergency evacuations begin. The ATED resistance movement has released shocking information. Pro-Russian authorities in key cities near the Crimean bridge, like Feodosia and Kerch, and nearby areas, have received secret emergency evacuation orders. The sense of insecurity and panic is becoming increasingly evident as vital supply routes are gradually being cut off. The rapid military paralysis quickly led to the chain collapse of Crimean's economy throughout this region, resulting in an unprecedented financial and energy crisis. The domestic energy market suffered a tremendous shock as fuel prices skyrocketed to unimaginable levels. In some places, prices reached 4.3 euros per liter, which is twice as expensive as the average in the European Union. At the same time, commercial banks imposed extremely strict cash withdrawal limits at ATMs, freezing cash flow and directly suffocating the operations of small retail stores. The tourism industry, once the economic lifeblood of the entire peninsula every summer, is now a picture of desolation and silence. Even though the Kremlin urgently injected an emergency aid package worth up to 4.3 billion rubles from the federal budget to try to save the situation, But this effort was in vain, as no tourist dared to set foot in the land of fire. Local observers bitterly commented that the huge flow of relief money would never reach struggling businesses that need it most, but would quickly be siphoned off and fall into the pockets of local collaborators. Behind those cold economic figures is a humanitarian disaster that is engulfing the lives of millions of innocent people. The public service system has collapsed, leaving the peninsula without basic necessities. The northern region of Crimea is suffering the deepest wounds of the war. Many towns and villages have endured extremely dark days as the central power system was completely cut off for more than 9 consecutive days. Power outages mean that supplies, daily necessities, and clean drinking water are paralyzed, and all mobile telecommunications connections go dead. On social media platforms, the people of Crimea are angry and desperately calling for help, demanding that the occupying authorities immediately issue an official evacuation order for the most heavily affected areas, while urgently requesting a minimum supply of fuel and household gas cylinders. In the face of such dire circumstances, as an effort to prevent a complete collapse, the LSTR news agency reported that a large-scale humanitarian relief campaign has been launched across the entire Crimean Peninsula and the city of Sevastopol. The Russian Red Cross had to urgently distribute special essential supply packages to the people, including food, clean drinking water, personal hygiene items, and even rehabilitation support equipment, such as wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, and canes. Given these developments, in your opinion, which battlefield is more intense? Is this Iran versus the US or Russia versus Ukraine? Please leave your opinion in the comments section below.